Hey guys, Captain Smash Strength Lab, Ottawa, Ontario. So today our topic is how people are mixed up when you're talking about calories in and calories out, and how this equation overall has been kind of misinterpreted and doesn't really work the way it should. Because in all fairness, weight loss should be really easy. I mean, it should be a simple thing of, okay, I cut down on what I'm eating and I move more, and therefore I'm burning more calories. So my calorie intake in is less than is going out. So it should essentially lose weight, okay? So now this is a calculation that should be really easy to do if you know exactly what you're eating. You're writing it down, you're plotting it in a food log, and you know exactly how many calories you're intaking, and you're kind of guesstimating how much exercise you're doing to kind of get that overall feel for it, right? So everybody has that little number, that 3,500 kilocalories equals 1 pound of body fat loss per week. So essentially, if we were to cut down by 500 kilocalories a day for a week, we would essentially lose 1 pound of fat a week. Here's the problem. When in a perfect society, in a perfect world, in a perfect environment, are you just going to lose 100% fat? When is that going to happen? Remember, the body is made up of more than just fat. You also have bones, muscle tissue. You also have stored forms of carbohydrate, glycogen. Okay, so all of these things have to be taken into account for that 3,500 kilocalories. So now, check this out. How many kilocalories do you think a pound of muscle has? A pound of muscle has about 600 to 700 kilocalories for 1 pound of muscle. All right, so what if I'm not exercising, I'm not lifting weights, I'm not doing anything, and I just decide to cut out all my, I divide my food intake by half. So say I'm having 2,000 calories and now I cut it down to 1,000 kilocalories. Am I gonna lose a lot of weight initially? The answer is yes, you're gonna lose a lot of weight. But guess what percentage is gonna be muscle mass versus body fat? It's going to be a very large percentage. Studies have shown that you're not actively exercising, and this is weight training, hard physical exercise, you're going to lose a greater percentage of muscle tissue versus body fat. Why does that look really good on the scale? Well, if I take 600 kilocalories and I times that by 2, that's 1,200. If I times it by another 2, that's what is that? 2,400. All right. So if I lose 4 pounds of muscle mass, that's going to have a bigger representation on the scale than 1 pound of fat, because I have to lose 3,500 calories for a pound of fat, versus if I lose 4 to 5 pounds of muscle, which equates to almost 3,500 kilocalories, that's going to be up to 5 to 6 pounds of weight that's gone on the scale, okay? So here's why your weight doesn't really matter so much, is because it matters what it is that you lost. Now, let's not forget the other things like water. Water has 0 kilocalories. 0 kilocalories are associated with water. So when you start a new diet program, you lose 10 pounds right off the bat, especially the low carb and the new keto craving that's all the rage nowadays. Guess what? You're losing a lot of that first week. Carbohydrate intake, if carbohydrate intake is reduced over a period of time, all that water that helps store carbohydrate in terms of glycogen is depleted, and you get rid of it because you don't need it. So you lose a large percentage of water because you're not intaking any carbs. It has no reason to store extra water, and so you just excrete it. So you lose a large percentage of weight just simply from water. And here's what a lot of diet centers want you to do. They don't want you to exercise. Why? Because they want you losing a large percentage of muscle tissue and water, because they swapped out they got rid of some of your carbohydrates and then threw you on a diet that has, good amount of protein, a little bit of essential fat, and a very low carbohydrate count. That way you're losing a large percentage of water and you're losing a large percentage of muscle mass. And overall, you'll be losing a little bit of body fat too, but the issue with muscle mass is it's an active tissue. If you're not feeding it, it's not going to want to respond. And if you're not exercising it, it's not going to want to stick around, because the body says, you know what? I've got all this muscle mass that's just kind of chewing up all of my calorie reserves, and I'm not getting any good calories. So why do I want to keep that? I want to degrade that muscle mass first. That way, overall I have less need for it, and I don't have to keep on replenishing that hungry mouth, that muscle tissue. I don't have to keep it going, and then I can just hold on to this body fat, because who knows how long this starvation effect is going to take into account. How long am I going to be in this? Okay, so the real issue with weight loss is long-term calorie deficit, okay? And very slow. It's got to be over time that you have a deficit in order to get this, body fat down. And the percentage is not going to be 100%. You're going to probably lose a little bit of muscle mass too. But how you prevent that muscle mass from going away is by lifting weights. That way, you're preserving most of this muscle mass. You're basically teaching the body, hey, I need this muscle mass because I've got to lift something heavy later. And the body fat, well, I need to burn off some energy, but I have to preserve my muscle mass. So I've got to tackle this fat store because I'm not getting enough calories in to support my muscular activities, my running, my jumping, my swimming, my weightlifting, all of that stuff. And so it's going to pull more from body fat stores to do that. So the real key is long-term caloric deficit that keeps you just below the water, that burns off enough percentage of body fat so that you start making some noticeable changes. And also taking into account that first week, once you switch your diet, you're going to get a very large percentage of body water loss, not to be confused with the pounds of fat, right? And for women, this is even more crucial, because when a woman's hormone cycle starts peaking and going into the progesterone phase of her monthly cycle, she's going to start storing more water anyway. So tracking weight is essentially horrible for women unless you're tracking it on a weekly basis, same time, same point of time in the morning or the afternoon after you voided the bladder and there's nothing in the body. So AM periods are good. Same day, boom, log it, keep track of an average over time, and you should start to see that decline, even though during the month you'll be up and down a little bit. So this is kind of the quick and dirty analysis of why the calories in and calories out equation doesn't really work as well as people think it does, because you're not just going to lose a pound or 2 pounds a week just by cutting your calories by 500 to 1,000 calories every week, because you have to take into account, what am I losing? Am I losing a pound of fat? Or am I losing a mixture of fat and muscle tissue? Am I losing a lot of water and muscle tissue and not very much fat? So guaranteed the easiest route for this is, be lifting weights, so you're preserving that muscle tissue, okay? Long-term caloric deprivation, not like severe. You want something between 250 to 500 kilocalories a day, and stay active. Another side note on this one, and we could talk about this all day, is the fact that after you've dropped weight, hey, guess what? Your caloric changes are going to change over time. So if you think by taking away, say you have a glass of beer with dinner every night, that's a good percentage of calories. Initially, you lose some weight from that, but it's not going to be sustainable, because once your body has adapted to that new lower weight category, its energy changes. Its energy is going to change. So your body's resting metabolic rate is going to shift down to that lower calorie count. So you're not going to be able to eat as much. Hence, be lifting weight, add some muscle tissue, that'll help, and get onward and upward from there. All right, Captain Smash out. See you later.